It's so sad because teachers are quitting. Even teachers who I personally know who used to be so passionate, so motivated, are now quitting simply because the money they make doesn't even cover the cost of their transportation.
Welcome to the Independent School Podcast. Thinking and acting strategically is the key to both securing the future of your school and helping to build a more equal and just world. My name's Juliette Corbett. I'm a consultant, speaker and facilitator specialising in helping independent schools. In this podcast, I translate tried and tested strategy and fundraising techniques into a language that works for schools. So if you're a senior leader in a private school and you want your daily work to feel less exhausting and more strategic, and if you want to once more feel the joy of making the world a better place through education, then you're in the right place. Welcome, and let's get started on this week's episode. Hello and welcome to this week's episode. We frequently talk on this podcast about our belief in the positive impact of education. We often talk as well about school partnerships, and in previous episodes we've been exploring the connections between independent schools and state schools in order to extend that power of education into larger communities around our schools. In this episode, I'm going to be extending the geography a little bit further. We're thinking about the impact of education in Lebanon and the role that's being played by a not-for-profit organisation called CodeBrave, and also exploring how they have started to work in partnership with UK schools to extend their impact through the power of education, and in this case within Lebanon. CodeBrave is an organisation that helps young people to lift themselves out of poverty. It does this through providing coding classes and boot camps. They look at robotics, they look at AI, web development, and they do this within public schools, so state-funded schools within Lebanon. They also work within really disadvantaged groups within that country, including refugees from Syria as well. They are working with 1,000 pupils within Lebanon this year, and the context in which they're working makes this work hugely important. Lebanon has had an economic crisis which, when compounded by the impacts of COVID, has significantly impacted large numbers of the population. So, for example, poverty rates over the last 3 years have increased from 28% of the population living in poverty to 82% of the population now living under the poverty line. 50% youth unemployment, very, very long-standing strikes within the public school sector there, and real inequalities in terms of access to opportunity more widely, and more specifically in this case, access to devices in the digital world. And situations which within countries like here in the UK just are really unheard of. So for example, teachers struggling to continue with their jobs because their pay is lower than the cost of petrol going into their cars to get them to and from work. Massive inflation impacting everybody across the country. So the work that CodeBrave is doing is hugely impactful. What's really interesting from the perspective of the independent school sector is that they have been looking more recently to diversify their income streams. And when I discovered CodeBrave through a family connection a number of months ago, what was really interesting to me was the start of the work they were doing with school partnerships with independent schools here in the UK, including Royal High in Bath, a GDST school, and also St Paul's School more recently as well. And what they're doing with these schools is helping to combine the fact that they're able to offer coding and STEM skill development, but also thinking about how that coincides with the global citizenship education that independent schools are wanting to offer. So in this week's episode, I've invited Clementine and Eliana Sleiman of CodeBrave to come and talk to us about the role of the not-for-profit work that they're doing in order for us to explore together further opportunities for partnership with UK schools. Clementine is the co-founder and co-director of CodeBrave. Prior to that, she worked as a consultant and data analyst, including at the UN in Lebanon. Before learning coding languages, she studied Middle Eastern languages, Arabic and Persian, at Oxford University. Eliana is the co-director and head of education at CodeBrave. She has a Bachelor of Engineering and a Master's in Educational Psychology from the American University of Beirut. She has 10 years of experience working with refugee children, children in underserved communities, and children with different educational needs. I am really excited about the opportunity that I have to elevate awareness of this amazing not-for-profit organisation. And if you only listen to one episode this summer, please make it this one. Please share this with people that you know within the sector who are looking at partnership opportunities. I think this is a really amazing charity, and I would love to see more schools working with it as it's looking to diversify its income streams and its impact. So many people have told me that this podcast really helps them, which is great because helping people is why I create these weekly episodes. I also hear from a lot of people who need a bit more support. And for those schools, I facilitate strategy away days for governors and leadership teams. I guide heads and chairs of governors through the creation and implementation of new strategic plans. And I lead regular one-to-one strategy advice calls with heads and directors of development. And the best part of my job is hearing from those people I work with that they're clearer about what to prioritise day to day, they're better able to lead change in their schools, and they feel happier and more confident that they're making good strategic decisions. So anytime you feel like you need a bit of extra help, just drop me a message so we can have a chat. You'll find my contact details at www.consultjuliet.co.uk. So as you listen to the interview, please do think about how you can be helping Clem and Eliana to raise their impact within CodeBrave. So let's dive into the interview. Clem and Eliana, welcome to the Independent School Podcast. It is fantastic to have you here with us today.
Thanks so much. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Right. So first of all, Eliana, I'm going to come to you because you're currently in Lebanon. I would love for you to, if you could just give us a little bit of background to what's going on in Lebanon and the kind of the last couple of years that the country's been through. Can you give us a little bit of background?
Sure. So the situation in Lebanon was better at one point. That's what I can say. Yeah. Poverty levels have risen really drastically in the past 3 years. It was something at around 28%. We're now up to 82% of the population living below poverty lines. Unemployment has also skyrocketed. Around 50% of youth are unemployed at the moment. And our education system's basically falling apart. So public schools in Lebanon are the schools that are affordable and accessible to any child in the country. And basically this year, for example, they went on strike for 3 months and the kids were out of school. And as someone in the edtech field in particular, when we look at the education system in Lebanon, so when it's functional, when kids are going to school, the curriculum is very mismatched to the job market. Kids aren't really learning the skills that they need to be learning to thrive in the 21st century. A lot of inequalities because of the lack of access to the digital world. So, and that has been exacerbated by COVID first, and then the economic crisis that has hit the country. And now we see that a lot of people's access has been cut off from work opportunities, from learning opportunities, because there's this gap to the digital world for them. So that's it in a nutshell, I suppose.
And it's interesting that you sort of say it used to be better. I think for those who know the area, it's really disappointing, really upsetting to see the speed with which the poverty levels have increased, the unemployment's increased. I know its proximity to Syria in terms of the refugee crisis has been really impactful as well. And to put it in context with the UK, we've been struggling with some strikes in the education sector, the public schools, the state schools in the UK, but nothing to the scale, nothing to the touches the scale of what you've just mentioned there in terms of youth unemployment rates at 50%, poverty rate, the strikes. It's really, we want to create hope for what can happen next, but it's a really disappointing situation to have ended up in as a country, isn't it?
It is, and especially because for me, like, the education system is the pillar of this country. Like, we can't fail all of these kids in the country. And it's so sad because teachers are quitting. Like, teachers, even teachers who I personally know who are used to be so passionate, so motivated, are now quitting simply because the money they make doesn't even cover the cost of their transportation. So it's not like they're breaking even, they're losing money by going to teach. And it's really sad because education is the hope we have in Lebanon.
And we know that obviously the people who are listening to this podcast believe in the power of education, because that's why we do the jobs that we do. Clem, can you give us a little bit of background then about CodeBrave and who you are as a not-for-profit and the role that you play in trying to boost again that education within Lebanon?
Yeah, sure. So in brief, CodeBrave is working to bring Lebanon out of this crisis by giving young people both the tech skills and the soft skills to lift themselves out of poverty. So we teach children from age 12 to 18, mainly working inside schools and shelters across the country. We're working with 1,000 children this year, and they get regular classes, 2 or 3 classes a week in coding and robotics. And that's not just to give them the skills for potential future jobs, which was one of the founding reasons for starting. We were thinking about the massively growing tech sector, and particularly the opportunity for digital online work that they can do remotely for international organizations, for example. But it's also about giving them the soft skills and the mindset, problem solving, troubleshooting, trial and error. These are skills that are inbuilt in the process of learning to code. And so it's a really interesting skill set you're learning science, you're learning maths, but it's also a kind of way of thinking. And it's fun. It so lends itself to really fun project-based classes, creating their own games, building websites for things they're passionate about. If they love football or they love music, they can make a website about it. So it really lends itself to that kind of project-based approach. And we think that tech education is one of the few pockets of hope for Lebanon. We think it can be a game changer for young people. So that's really where we focused here. And we operate in many senses like fundraisers that are funded like a traditional charity through grants and donations. But 2 years ago, we also set up an arm that generates our own revenue called CodeBrave Tutors, which basically provides live online tutorials to clients internationally, to children, mainly in the UK and also UAE, on our accredited courses, topics like AI or game development. And the idea is that every time people purchase a class, it funds a class for a child in Lebanon. It's a 1-for-1 model. We see this as kind of the future of charity. So we're moving away from the traditional form of charity where people just donate and then each year you fundraise, to one which is more self-supporting and sustainable.
Yeah, and that development of that business model is, as you say, it's sort of following the trend in the wider, not just the charity sector, but the general not-for-profit sort of socially driven companies that are looking to diversify income. So yes, fundraising is always going to be really important, but looking for other streams of income. And I have to say that I find it really fascinating and quite inspiring that you've utilised what sounds like the turmoil during the pandemic. People were willing to do things online and therefore pivoting into the idea of generating this additional income stream through CodeBrave tutors, tutoring children outside of Lebanon to generate income in order to continue the work with 1,000 children a year within Lebanon itself.
Yeah, exactly. It made it more feasible in parents' mind. And then I think now people realise that amongst a range of activities, and of course parents want their kids to still be involved in in-person activities, which is really important, and get outside. But at the same time, some parents maybe want to also have some time indoors to use screen time usefully, and to not have the hassle of driving them to class. So that's the group of people we've tapped into.
I think you're right. And also thinking about the wider social trend, I know that as a parent of primary age children, a lot of the advice now isn't so much around the length of screen time, but it's around what they're doing while they're on a screen. And so I love the idea that with CodeBrave tutors, they're doing something productive, which is fun and engaging, but is also giving them some skill set. And as you say, those soft skills going forward, which is brilliant. So how did CodeBrave start? What was the initial trigger for setting up the charity?
Yeah, well, I've been living in Lebanon for 10 years. And at that point, about 4.5 years ago, I was working at the UN and volunteering at the side at a shelter near Beirut on the weekends. I think the UN, you feel quite far away often from actually working with people, which is what I originally loved, working with children. And so I started volunteering at a shelter for homeless children, and the most brilliant group of kids, fun, full of creativity. And there was one boy, he's about 15 years old, called Khalil, who asked us to learn coding. Me and another volunteer and it happened that me and this other volunteer, Stephen, were both really into that as a hobby. We liked tinkering around with electronics and making little robotics projects. So we thought, why not set up a coding workshop for the kids on the weekend? And initially very ad hoc, but we realized that actually it got them to come to class in a way that we hadn't seen, got them to focus. Because these are kids that often really struggled in class with concentration, with a sense of failure. A lot of them came from really traumatic backgrounds. Stephen's background was in psychology and child psychology. So we was very interested to see that they were suddenly focusing for 2-3 hour workshops, which was absolutely extraordinary compared to what was normally happening in class, and they're being taught through more traditional teaching techniques, like more of a lecture style. And so now they were building their own self-driving cars. They were making Ghostbusters games. They were designing their own mad projects that were just brilliant. And it got them kind of wanting to learn science. I realized it's kind of a hack to education as much as a job upskilling project. So about a year later, I quit my job and decided to do this in my life. And, this is so much more motivating and I felt impactful and real. And we started running classes all over the country. And so we're now kind of 4 years down the line. We still have this really strong focus on educational psychology. Eliana joined pretty soon after we started. She has a background also, as well, both in engineering, but also in educational psychology. So that was a big focus of how we train the teachers. And yeah, it's been really exciting to see the response in Lebanon and how many schools that really don't have many resources but know that this is important and are responding really positively to it. They can see that this is a game changer.
Yeah. So I think as many of us find in our careers, at some point we stumble across something that ignites a passion. And that's a beautiful story to demonstrate. And it's also fascinating and I suppose inspirational for young people to hear us tell stories about how we stumble across our passion and find purpose in our life, often by accidental conversations. So thank you so much, Clem, for sharing that with us. Eliana, could you tell us a little bit about what your students actually do in the classes that you teach? And maybe we could divide that up and start by thinking about, within the classes that you're teaching within Lebanon, what is it that they're achieving in the classroom? And then maybe we can talk a little bit separately about CodeBrave tutors.
So in the classes in Lebanon, the kids work on different projects. We've done things like agri-tech, where the kids had a full week to research problems in traditional agriculture, to talk to experts at a university here in agriculture about the future of plant conservation, and to come up with solutions using technology, actually build their models and then present to their classmates. We do a lot of things with the microbit, with Makey to make coding tangible for them. And a lot of the kids end up participating in competitions. We have students who've won in national competitions, and we have one student who is requesting an international competition after the other. And even though he hasn't ranked first yet, he's ranked in the top 15% for his age group, and he's determined to go further. Perfect. And bear in mind, this is a child who doesn't really have a device at home or stable internet, and he uses his recess time to go up to the computer lab at his school so he can work on his project. Like, that's how determined.
That's real commitment, isn't it? That's a passion that's rooted deep.
Yeah. And we also have classes that we run for kids that are older, and those are more targeted and focused on web development. And the things that the students have achieved, like, this is probably one of the most favorite things someone can ever ask me, and you should give me a time limit to that because I can probably not stop talking about it. Just yesterday, I received a website from one of the students, Ala. When I first met Ala during his interview to apply to this program, because this program, only a small bit of what we do is like it's a scholarship program for kids who don't have access to other resources, but who are passionate about technology. So I met him, and all he could talk about was his passion for typewriting and that he really likes typewriting. And he gets admitted to the program because he shows, great potential. First website he built is a portfolio about himself. And I'm telling his teacher, wow, like, this is really good. It's really well designed. And then another project, comes in, and he has built a website where people can go in and type and practice like their typing speed, and then it gives them a guide on what to do to improve. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Like he's even ahead of the curriculum. And just yesterday I learned he's running a little side hustle. He's 16 or 17 years old, selling gummy bears to, make some pocket money. And he built a website for his gummy bear business, and it's so professional looking. And I'm like, this is amazing. Like people can now shop through his website and get gummy bears delivered all over Lebanon. And on top of that, he's managing school, and he's also doing a paid internship with 2 other students, and they're building a game for an organization in the UK. I can't believe at that age, this kid is doing all of these things and doing amazingly at all of them. And that's just one student.
And I think isn't that a brilliant case study to demonstrate what you were talking about, both of you, earlier in our conversation about it being a door that can open not just to potentially jobs in coding, but also the fact that it's developing all those soft skills, and the fact that he's accompanying it alongside his face-to-face side hustle business, selling gummy bears in the playground or whatever. And so this is about genuinely lifting people out of poverty, but in multiple different ways that suit each individual. It's fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
We've had students who initially started doing internships that we've helped them set up. For example, we had 2 students, one of them, Yusuf, from a very rural area in Lebanon. They built a website for a client in the US. After that, they got an internship at a software development company in Lebanon, and basically the place that it's called Beirut Digital District. It's like the Silicon Valley of Lebanon. We make that joke. So they got an internship there. And then one of them got that led to a job offer as a part-time front-end web developer for one of them. And then the other one got a job as a teaching assistant. Also, the amazing thing is these people who the students are building websites for, they're referring others. So first they come to us because they're driven by the social impact, but then they're like, oh, wait, the work's really excellent. So we had that client in the US refer another person to us. We're building a website for them at the moment. And just yesterday, I got an email from someone that they referred. And so now we have another referral through that chain because the students are doing such an amazing job. And
that's fantastic. And they're acting as advocates for what you're achieving and giving examples and case studies of the impact that CodeBrave is having for young people who are really needing opportunity, needing a structured education, which is not being provided necessarily within the public schooling sector. So that's absolutely fantastic. Can you tell us a little bit, Eliana, about the things that your students with CodeBrave tutor? So these are young people who are working outside Lebanon with your tutors on online sessions.
Okay, so typically for CodeBrave tutors, we have kids, a lot of them in the UK, some in Dubai as well, who we match with our tutors. They do one-on-one online sessions, and they work on different tracks, various topics. So we have courses covering things like app development, game development, web development, AI, and so, we usually have a consultation with the parents. We recommend a track for the child, and then we really follow the child's lead and take it from there. A lot of times we end up saying, this child's really interested in this. So we take them further along that track. They work on a lot of different projects as well with microbits, makey-makeys, and different kits that work as extension to those. And a lot of the things actually that we do with them, we also do with the kids in Lebanon. So some of the things I described earlier, we also do with our clients online. And we also have some of them participating in international coding competitions, doing very well in those competitions, creating amazing stories. And I think what I think is the coolest is that, as we develop and design courses for them, a lot of times we're thinking hard, what kind of project ideas do we need to come up with and include in our course designs? And then our teachers are teaching the kids, and then the kids come up with the most brilliant ideas, and why did we not think of that first? We just see a lot of potential and creativity unleashed when we teach those kids.
Absolutely. I love the story that you shared with me before about the situations where you've created at the end of a class a rather open project, where the young people can be quite creative and innovative, and what they come up with is beyond your wildest dreams. You never would have thought. And I think that's the example of that creativity that young people, that kids have, that give them a format and it really shines through, which is absolutely superb to hear.
Can I give a story, Julia?
Please, absolutely, Clem, yes.
About one of the first instances where I think I realised that, because I didn't come from an education background particularly, so I wasn't so, I suppose, accustomed to seeing that creativity of children, how much more brilliant it is than the creativity of adults often. And with that first group we started with at the shelter, they were a group of 5 girls and boys, about 15, 16, and we had a collaboration with a local art venue here called the Grand Factory music venue. And they wanted the students, we talked about the students building an installation for the venue. And initially I thought, we'll do a brainstorming session, but probably the ideas will come from us, the grown-ups. Mm-hmm. And I had this idea, which in retrospect was rubbish. And the students came up with this crazy idea to have a kind of mirror. Imagine a full-length mirror, but a large one that was actually full of LED lights, little lights, hundreds of them. And when you walked in front of it, it would mirror your silhouette. So you could dance in front of the mirror and it would be your silhouette dancing with you. And you could also adjust it. This is also their idea, to kind of beat with the music. So it would have a sensor in it that would be, every time the music around had its beat, it was pulsing the light. It was just the coolest thing, super Instagrammy. So the venue was really happy.
Yeah, young people, and that creativity is just disintegrates over time. And normally it's lack of confidence ourselves in play and the importance of play. Yeah. And then some of the things that I talk about with regards to divergent thinking within strategy session, which is obviously a completely different topic from this, but what I'm trying to do is encourage adults to again enhance that creativity and to kind of create that divergent thinking process in a room, which can hook back into that childhood of creativity that we all had. You mentioned a little bit earlier about the fact that the tech field is growing and changing, and therefore you're preparing the young people in Lebanon for future careers, which you may not know exactly what they are, in addition to all of the soft skills we've spoken about. What's your perspective on how we should be actually preparing children to learn in their schooling age in order for them to be prepared for what we don't really know what technology is going to be available to them when they enter the workplace and then through their careers? Eliana, do you have any thoughts on that?
It's actually a question that we often get asked in our work in Lebanon. People often tell us, well, how do you know what jobs are going to be available in 10 years? And then with our clients for CodeBrave tutors, they often ask us like, oh, what language should my child learn first? What field should they go into first? And what we always say is that kids should be learning the foundations. Like, they should be learning the foundations of computer science at a young age. It's not really about learning a specific language or a specific tool or delving into a specific domain. It's more about exposure. It's, just give them exposure and allow them to explore what's out there when it comes to computer science, so that as they grow and as technology evolves, they can decide then if they want to end up in software development, they can decide what branch to go to. So it's not really about teaching them a specific thing. It's about teaching them foundations that they will need now or in 10 years that will always be relevant. And it's about really teaching them to be independent learners and problem solvers. And again, if I think back to our students, like those students I just, told you about some of their achievements, every single one of them, for the project that they've built, they've used technologies that we haven't explicitly taught them how to use. They've incorporated elements, like even the younger ones, when they work on Scratch, sometimes I'm like, oh, look at that animation they did, or that game they built. Like, it actually has elements we really never modeled for them in class, but they went on and did it by themselves, because learning computer science and learning coding is really about trial and error, and kids learn that it's okay to fail. And that's something they've actually said to us. Like, I've asked a lot of kids, I always ask them, what do you learn in your coding classes? And a lot of times they talk about things like that. They don't talk about functions or variables. They say, oh, we're learning that it's okay to fail. We're learning not to give up. We're learning to try over and over until our code works. So I really think it's about teaching them to be independent learners, to be problem solvers. And the goal isn't to graduate like an army of people who go into software developers, but rather a generation of students who have skills that will allow them to be more productive in their future jobs, more efficient, regardless of what job they end up taking, and to also understand the applications of computer science in the world around us so that they can be informed participants in the world. We should want students to understand how technology around them works and basically the implications of things like AI in their lives. However that progresses with time, because as I said, like not everyone's going to be a software developer, and it's not about teaching them specific tools because those will continuously evolve, but it's about having them be prepared to adapt and be flexible as those tools evolve and understand how they impact them and the people around them.
Absolutely. And I think that is when people talk about, we're now raising an AI native generation, this idea that those of us who had to learn how to use touchscreens and so on were amazed when our toddlers started doing it, and it's just they are digital native. But the new generation that we're looking at now are going to be AI natives. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they need to know everything about how AI works and all the rest of it. What they do need to know is how to navigate a world in which AI is an integral part of what we're doing. In the same way as they need to be able to navigate a world in which we can't always tell what's fake news and what's what. So I completely agree. It's about giving them those fundamental building blocks, those fundamental tools, which then enable them to really innovate and be really thrive in an AI native world.
Basically prepare them to be digital citizens.
Absolutely. And for them to play their part. So Eliana, how have you partnered with schools in the past? Because obviously in Lebanon, there's a public school system which you're partnering. And then I know that you've also been involved with UK schools.
So in Lebanon, as Clem said, we basically partner with schools by implementing our programs with them. So we find an existing institution, and then our CodeBrave teachers go to that school, and coding classes become a regular part of the school day. So kids might have math and science, and they have a coding class. And for each grade level, we deliver 2 coding classes per week. And then in the summers, we do coding boot camps where we get even more time to do a lot of the fun activities we have planned for the kids. In the UK, we've done online boot camps during school holidays. So for example, with Royal High in Bath, the GDST school, we did an online boot camp for the year 9s. They basically used Microbit. We had our teacher joined online, the students were in class, and then their ICT teachers was also in class to support. And they used the Microbit, for example, to create like a fitness device, to count their steps, to measure the distance that they've covered, to like show a little trophy with the LED lights on the screen if they meet a certain target of steps, to buzz to give them a reminder to move, stuff like that. They also worked on like a physical model of the tug of rope game, where two teams
tug of war, yes. Tug of war,
tug of war.
Yes.
Yeah, in Arabic, the name's related to the rope. But anyway, so they basically built a model of that with the rope being represented by cardboard and aluminum foil and an LED light on a screen. And then they had to tap in either direction to get the LED light to their end. So yeah, created fun projects. The students had such a good time. We also talked to them about what we're doing in Lebanon, a bit about the situation here and how partnering with their school helps us in Lebanon. We know it's important for schools to basically be building their students' global awareness, for their students to start thinking about how they want to make social impact. So yeah, it was like combining STEM skills with global citizenship. We also have a planned talk in the next 2 weeks with St. Paul's School. So, yeah.
Fantastic. I look forward to hearing how that goes. And I think that is the root of why I wanted to invite you onto the podcast, because when I first heard about what you were doing at CodeBrave, the immediate connections for me were that in the UK sector, and actually much more widely as well, in independent schools, there is a drive towards a focus on being ready to be global citizens by the time they leave. And what does that mean? How can we help our young people to engage globally? And I think what I realized was that what you offer in terms of the way that you partner with UK schools and the way that could grow over time obviously provides coding boot camps and coding lessons, which is all fantastic and part of your core offer, but has this additional element which is really interesting around helping young people who are based within the UK or in other more privileged countries to understand how they can be really good global citizens and to understand what's happening in Lebanon and to understand the impact on young people there. Clem, can you give us a little bit of information about how schools in the UK can become involved in what you're doing?
Yeah, lots of ways. And like you say, I think we're really interested to build those partnerships that bring that international awareness for both sides. So the students in the UK are understanding what's happening in Lebanon and how life might be different. And likewise, students in Lebanon feel connected to the wider world. So we've done, like Eliana said, boot camps at schools. And that's something we're looking to grow. We're also starting to twin classrooms with classrooms at schools in the UK. So for example, an IT or a computer science class at a school in London might be paired with a class in Beirut, and they'd be following a similar curriculum and course that we can provide to create either a fun game or their own websites, and then sharing the results with each other. So it's kind of like a digital pen pal. And they might be able to see a bit about what's life like in the other country. So one of our courses is about creating animated stories, and that's what we've got, some classes creating stories about their life and what they do with their day. So I think that's a really interesting way to learn about children somewhere completely different.
Absolutely. And then in terms of not necessarily schools, but individual parents within the UK, thinking about that CodeBrave tutoring offer as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about how people can hear a little bit more about any of these things?
Yeah, definitely. You can reach out. The CodeBrave Tutors website is codebravetutors.org, and feel free to reach out to us. Eliana and I are on LinkedIn as well if you want to reach out directly. I think probably our LinkedIn's can be put in the show notes.
Yeah, that's right.
And that could be either about tutoring your own children. It could be about working with your school. And also, Eliana mentioned that some of our students in Lebanon are working on building websites for quote unquote clients. We don't actually charge the clients, but these are people that want a website built for them, and they have a relatively flexible timeline. Normally we say about 4 months from start to end. So if you need a website built, then get in touch and maybe we can collaborate and you can get a website for free. So lots of ways to collaborate, and really interested to be better connected to people in the UK. So do reach out.
Fantastic. And actually, for that last option, I'm thinking it's the parents, businesses potentially of the schools that are listening to this podcast that might be interested in that particular opportunity to have a website built by your young people in Lebanon. So what I'm going to do is put all of those links into the episode notes. So you'll have a link to the CodeBrave Lebanon website, which is talking about what they're doing there within the country, and also CodeBrave Tutors. And I'm going to put links to the LinkedIn profiles for both Clem and Eliana as well, so that please do reach out. One of the reasons that I was so excited to have you on the podcast is wanting to kind of start off a little bit more of a wave of awareness of what you're doing here in the UK. So I'm really hoping that people are going to reach out and make contact with you. Thank you so much to both of you for sharing your story and explaining CodeBrave more to us. It's been fantastic to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Juliet. It's a pleasure, and we love the podcast. So thank you for producing.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for having us.
You're very welcome. I look forward to keeping in touch again soon. Bye-bye then, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Independent School Podcast, the podcast that helps senior leaders in private schools to think and act more strategically, both because they want to secure the future of their school and because they want to help build a more equal and just world. You can listen in everywhere that podcasts are available, and if you want to catch up on previous episodes or follow any of the links that I've mentioned today, just head over to www.consultjuliet.co.uk/podcast.